when I look at the blogosphere, when I look at this work that we do, I have like sort of moral ethical quandaries. I oftentimes feel like, am I doing something good here, or am I polluting the film industry? Am I polluting what it is to just be a devout fan, or even if I'm not personally doing it, am I attached to an industry that does? Am I attached to an industry that is slowly taking all of the fun and all of the joy out of being a lover of movies and out of being a purveyor of fine entertainment? You know, so I guess it's time to get into some of that a little bit because it all connects. You just have to trust me that it all connects. So this all began with the latest episode of 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff arriving on Monday morning. I listened to that as I listen to it every week. I'm obsessed with that show and Something to Wrestle With, which again, if you're a wrestling fan, if you're not listening to those, I don't know what's going on with you. But, it's even if you're not a wrestling fan, I should just let you know it's a pretty fascinating look at the rise and fall of a company, at what led to its amazing, huge, meteoric rise in the mid 90s to all of a sudden crashing and burning and going pretty much bankrupt and having to get sold off to WWE, WWF at the time, within a 6-year span of becoming this huge global brand. And he Bischoff really goes into great detail about all the different things that led to the company's demise. And yes, he lets himself off the hook a little bit too often, but he goes into a lot of detail about the daily grind and difficulties and the huge political pressures that led to his company folding. And on this week's episode in particular, he talked about the dirt sheets a lot. And when we say the dirt sheets as wrestling fans, what we're really referring to are geek blog sites. So the dirt sheets for the film industry are all these blog sites like Revenge of the Fans, like all of these little comicbook.com and Dark Horizons and Latino Review, and I mean, take your pick. Collider, Screen Rant. They're all some varying level of a dirt sheet. Because what we've done is, us bloggers, us fans, is we found a way to turn being a fan into an industry. We start these newsletters and these websites where we just go and feverishly start discussing any and all news about this thing that we love. And any information that we get about this thing that we love, we share it in these detailed reports. And we think we're doing this big service and we're giving all the fans, we're arming them with all of this information. And in theory, yes, that is what we're doing. But ultimately, with the dirt sheets in particular and their relationship to WCW in the late 90s, it became this thing where WCW became like the whipping boy. It became like the DCEU was a couple years ago. It just became fun to rag on the company as they were struggling, as they were losing stars, as they were losing money, as the new owners who bought the parent company of WCW started cutting their budgets and putting all these creative restraints on them. The bloggers, the dirt sheets, would basically just kind of point and laugh at them. And it got to a point where the bloggers really started to impact the public perception of the product. And even beyond that, his owners, the owners of the company, the corporate people, because, at some point Time Warner bought Turner Broadcasting, and that brought a whole new, level of complications. But the issue was all these suits, all these executives who didn't necessarily want to go and take in the product and monitor it themselves. They would go and tell an assistant, "Hey, go see what they're saying about WCW on the internet, and let me know, what it is that fans think." And the problem with that is, dirt sheets don't necessarily represent the fans. They only represent the most hardcore, intense, crazy fans, that small percentage who don't just watch the show on Monday night, but also every single day they're looking for every scrap of information they can because they obsessively follow it and they love it and they're entitled to do that. But on these little blog sites, all you'd get is this very sort of skewed view of the product. And they would get information. These reporters would get information from people who, of course, they're going to trust. What if it's, the world champion of a company who called you up from a payphone after a pay-per-view to tell you, hey, so-and-so is about to get fired and it's chaos back here and this, and that. But the problem is, while the reporters want to go and believe them because, oh my God, I just got off the phone with someone I just saw on TV, they're real. The problem is everyone has an agenda. Everyone has some sort of, there's a reason, there's a political gain in a lot of the information they would pass. And it's hard to properly vet that. And what ends up happening is a lot of speculation would then get reported as fact, or one person's viewpoint on a situation gets passed on, and now it's part of wrestling lore for the last 20 years. And Bischoff has had a lot of fun basically hearing a lot of these little, mythologies that have been built. And then when the host, Conrad Thompson, asks him about them, he mentions that either never happened or that was one of 10 ideas we discussed that day. That was never going to be the plan. It was one of several plans, but this website took it, ran with it, said it was the plan, and now for a whole generation of fans who grew up on those sites, that is their truth. And it totally screwed with his ability to speak to his bosses about the product because they were going based on what the blog sites said. And it really kind of helped just poison the well on the WCW brand and the overall product. And while listening to that, I saw all these little parallels, and it started feeling like specifically like with DC, I was like, oh my goodness, the DCEU got dirt sheeted. All the blog sites that just smelled blood in the water and saw, you get lots of clicks and lots of attention and lots of social media followers when you pile on DC's struggles. So let's just do a lot of that. And I started realizing this week that, wow, it really, to me, it feels like the DCEU got dirt sheeted. They got dealt the same hand that WCW did, where they're just trying to pivot and figure out what they got to do to stay relevant and tweak their plans and just live, do what they got to do as a company. But the online website fan geek blog community just totally turned on them, made them feel like their product sucks and is subpar, and the wrestlers would go home and read this stuff too, and it was like this weird, nasty, negative loop. And it made me look at all of that and made me decide, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a dirt sheet writer. I don't want to be a Dave Meltzer. I don't want to be that's a prominent wrestling journalist, so to speak. I walked away from that podcast really kind of feeling like, I hope I'm not hurting the very industry I love. Because that's something that Bischoff said. The great irony is that these people they proclaim to love wrestling. And the reason that they report on it so passionately and in such, vivid detail is because they love it. But they are inadvertently hurting the very thing they love by spreading things that are maybe only half-truths. Or maybe they are true, but no one should know about them just yet. Maybe that thing that you just turned into a gigantic controversy would have resolved itself in 72 hours if you just allowed those people having the conflict to figure it out. Let that wrestler go to his boss and have them hash out their issues. Instead, that angry wrestler called you on Monday and you blew up the story, and now it's a huge ordeal. So I realized that this blogging thing, this way in which fans become reporters and start, building up this whole industry around being a fan and getting whatever scrap of information they can and running it on their blog site, I realized that it's really dangerous. You got to have a lot of integrity. You have to have good intentions. You have to know what you're there to do, because otherwise it's very easy for this whole thing to get very sour and go very sideways. So that was on Monday where I was thinking about all that. Then yesterday, there were three different things yesterday, and the last of which was the Batman thing, okay? The first thing that happened yesterday for me was I woke up to all these tweets about the Joker script. And I was infuriated. by what I heard and by what I saw. Because it sounds like some bloggers read the script and then took it to the internet to trash this movie and to make it sound like, oh my God, you may as well just cancel your Twitter accounts because it's going to be mayhem when this movie comes out. And they basically opened up this whole can of worms where now this movie that was once pretty well hyped and people were very excited for it based on the trailers, and there's lots of reasons to think that this is going to be a pretty special and unique film. Now all of a sudden the entire internet conversation is about what a mess it might be, and then you have people defending it, you have people saying, oh no, it's going to be a disaster. And it's like, why would you do this? This embarrasses me as a blogger. This makes me want to just leave entirely. I do not want to be associated with an industry that undercuts the very industry it professes to love. Because that's what you're doing. If you're going to take a script for a film that has not come out yet and start telling people that this is going to be a divisive, polarizing film, you're already planting that seed in your crowd. You're already planting that seed in the mind of the prospective audience. So now instead of walking in with an open mind, all the people who read that are going to walk in feeling like, oh, well, now let's see why it's so divisive. And they're going to look, oh, that must be the scene that so-and-so said was going to make people angry. And like now they're not in the movie. They're not falling into the dream state that Alfred Hitchcock wants the audience to fall into when he makes a film, back when he made films. You know, you're supposed to go into a dream state and just watch the movie and enjoy it for the entertainment that it is. Enjoy the twists and turns, the acting, the drama, the whole 9 yards. You're supposed to be able to just walk in and do that. But when already a subset of the fandom is being fed negative sounding, panic inducing information about the movie, now you've just tainted that movie for a bunch of people. Like, what kind of a scumbag do you have to be to think that, oh, okay, it's all right for me to do this? So yesterday I was just incensed by that. And not only was I angry that people were passing on information about the script and especially doing it in a negative, clickbaity sort of way. But also, it's so devoid of actual knowledge about the situation. Because the script with the Joker almost doesn't matter. I know it's going to sound funny, but it almost doesn't matter. Because first of all, you already had Zazie Beetz pointing out in an interview a few months ago that they didn't really even go by the script. That the script was being rewritten every day. So how are you going to go and look at a script and tell me that, oh, the movie's going to be a disaster or the movie's going to be divisive? You don't know yet. Not to mention, a script is one thing, but a script in the hands of a wonderful director and a great cast is a whole other ball game. You can't judge just based on the words on the page. There are great scripts that become terrible movies. There are terrible scripts that become great movies. There are movies that have no scripts that end up being phenomenal. Because that's the second thing that happened yesterday. I started listening to Christopher McQuarrie's epic long podcasts with the Empire, the Empire podcast. They've sat down with Chris McQuarrie for each of the last 2 Mission Impossible films, and they've spoken about his process of creating them. And they're hours and hours long, but they're riveting. Christopher McQuarrie is an excellent interview. Now he's instantly jumped up to the top of like people I'd love to interview on this show one day, which, by the way, I have a very cool guest coming next week, but we'll get to that in a second. McQuarrie instantly jumped to someone I'm dying to speak to, because he was pointing out, like with Fallout, they hardly had a script. There were times when he was having sets constructed and still going, I don't know what we're going to do there yet. Later today, I don't know what we're going to do there yet. And look how wonderful Fallout turned out. Mission Impossible Fallout was a big win. Fans loved it. Critics loved it. It did very nice financially. McQuarrie's going to come back to film a 2-part next film. Not a 2-part, but he's going to film the next 2 basically back to back. I mean, the movie was a huge win. And meanwhile, it went in with with apparently only a very loose script that was evolving greatly on the fly. He said he wasn't even sure what the villain's motivation was until they began filming. So you can't judge a film based on the script. So these people, I want to say, I want to call names, or I want to insult them. I want to like just drop all kinds of 4-letter words right now, because it's honestly, it's my show. It's fucking infuriating. And specifically with the Joker, I've spoken to people who've been on that set. I've spoken to people who worked on the film. And I'm gonna share something with you, okay? Are you ready, cool kids? It's just us now. Shh, don't tell anyone. On the set of the Joker, they often would spend entire days filming multiple versions of the same scene. Because that's the sort of experimental way that Phillips approached this material. A lot of times they would film the same scene 1 or 2 or 3 different ways at all these different levels. You know what I mean? Where all of a sudden, okay, in this version of the scene, when the Joker comes out of the courthouse, the crowd that's standing outside basically ignores him, and he looks like something of a loner and a pariah, and it didn't work out. In the next scene, when he comes out of the courthouse, the crowd is cheering him on, and there's ticker tape, and they're holding signs. Then in this version of the court, when he comes out, he pulls out a Tommy gun and plows down the crowd. I mean, I just took a real example and just had a little fun with it. A real example that I was given from someone who worked on the set who confided in that in me. But the point is, the film is like a living, breathing document. Todd Phillips wanted to film all kinds of different variations, obviously sticking within a certain blueprint that he had in mind. But his plan was, okay, I'm going to film a ton, and then in the editing bay, I'm going to find my movie. I'm going to see how it is I want to play this thing. That is how Phillips is approaching the Joker. So therefore, you can go fuck yourself with your concerns about the script, because the script almost doesn't matter when it comes to a film like this. So, I was infuriated by that. And that fed into what I heard on Monday about how basically the geek blogs of the wrestling world really messed with WCW's chances of ever recovering or ever being able to be what it could have been, because it had this meteoric rise. It went from being, a steady number 2 to being number 1 for over a year and being just an absolute juggernaut, to being basically gone in a matter of years. It's a fascinating story. And I'm not going to put all of that on bloggers. I'm not even going to put most of it on bloggers. But the fact that the online blogging community of quote unquote fans made the boss of a company, made his life that much harder to do his job and save his company. The fact that it led to the corporate overlords and their executive suits to read those reports and decide that they needed to pull the plug on certain things, or they needed to undermine the creative decisions of the people who brought them to the top. It just, between that and that Joker thing, I really just started feeling like, I don't know that I want to do this anymore. I want to keep the podcasting going, and revengeofthefans.com will live on, and it's probably, it's not going anywhere. But I'm mulling over sort of a change in format or a change in focus. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be a hindrance. I actually do love this industry. I have a profound respect for the work that directors and writers and actors do. This stuff is my life. When I talk about entertainment as my life in my little Twitter bio, I mean it. I live for this stuff. That's why I always say, this podcast is just me hitting record and saying all the things that are on my mind anyway. All day long, what you're hearing right now is my inner monologue, and I'm thinking all this stuff anyway. So I'm not going to go away, and nothing's changing immediately, but I got to get my crew together, and we got to talk about this, because I do not want to be part of the problem, because there is a problem. Because there was some other stuff in the Macquarie interview I found really interesting, and I think you might too. Because at some point, he was asked the question about, do these kinds of podcasts, or does the reporting or the excessive analysis of all this stuff sort of mess with your creative process or hinder your, the way you approach these productions? And Macquarie pointed out something that I'm just like, wow, he's so right. And that's probably how directors see all of us. What he was talking about, how listen, you can't tailor your movie, you can't cater to the internet fans and the bloggers. You just can't, because they're a very small percentage of the audience. And unfortunately, they're so obsessive about things that they're never satisfied. He pointed out how, like, once he tried to, like, he gave a cute example of, like, when he was working on Jack Reacher with Tom Cruise. When Tom Cruise was initially cast, a lot of the hardcore fans went on the internet and said, this is an outrage. Jack Reacher is supposed to be a big, tall, brooding guy. You can't hire little shrimpy Tom Cruise for this. So he thought of a way that he might address that. You know, and aside from having Tom Cruise bulk up and get all, you know, he got thicker and more jacked, his hands were puffy in that movie. He got, like, thick and brawny, you know, more so than when he's Ethan Hunt. He had a shot in the movie that he was hoping those fans would appreciate. He's like, all right, you think he's little, but look, here's going to be this shot where he doesn't have a shirt on, and we're going to focus in on the scars that he has on his body, because that's also a signature sort of Jack Reacher thing. You know, this whole idea of, like, he's this battered warrior. And he wanted to focus that so that people will maybe go, okay, he may not be 6'2", but this is definitely a good, you know, version of Jack Reacher. This is an honest, you know, good adaptation of Jack Reacher. But what happened? That scene was included in the movie, and the bloggers and the hardcore fans, instead of going, oh, wow, okay, you know, he got jacked and he has the scars and, you know, whatever, they started going, oh, God, Tom Cruise is so vain. They had to do a shirtless, topless scene just so he could show off his body. And Macquarie said, like, when he saw that reaction, he was so turned off that he just decided, I can't make movies to please the online fans because they're never satisfied. There's always going to be some bug up their ass about something. So I have to make this movie for the other 99% of the audience. The people who don't even know a movie is coming until they see the trailer for it and then decide based on the trailer, oh, you know what? That looks pretty good. When that comes out, you know, I'm going to block out 3 hours of my life to go to a theater and see that. Macquarie wants to honor those fans. That's who he's here for. He's not here to please the hardcores. And it really sounds like the hardcores are sort of a hindrance to a lot of filmmakers. And listen, I don't want to make us all sound bad. You know, being a super fan is wonderful. But when you're in this hive where everything is like, just look at this week with Game of Thrones. Look at this thing with the petition to HBO to reshoot season 8. Look at the multiple petitions that came up since last night about replacing Robert Pattinson as Batman, which is ludicrous on so many levels. But when you look at the online community, the online fan community, and I put the bloggers and the fans together because at the end of the day, we're all just fans. I'm just a fan just like you are. I have a few friends who give me cool information because I've been doing it for 5 years and I got a lot of free time on my hands. But at the end of the day, I'm just a fan. So when the industry looks, when filmmakers and artists and actual creators look at the online community, I imagine they go, ugh. I imagine they're fairly grossed out by a lot of the behavior they see. So that's why for me, it's very important for me to try to figure out my place in all this. Because yes, I try my very best to make Revenge of the Fans be a place where things are positive, where we're going to give you the information and we're going to try not to make you feel bad about anything. Even if it's bad news, we're going to try to look at the silver lining. I try to make Revenge of the Fans a haven for people who are tired of all the snark and all the sarcasm and all the backbiting and all of the just childish nonsense that really detracts from what we're here to do, which is to love movies and to celebrate our favorite characters and go on journeys with them. That's what we're here for. We're not here to go, oh, let me analyze this concept art, or they shot an alternate version of this scene with a different costume. God, what idiots! Why didn't they go with that other version? Gah! Like all of this, like this micromanaging and dissecting of stuff that's really none of our business, really just has me wondering, you know, what the future looks like for myself and for Revenge of the Fans. Because honestly, I'm pretty put off by it all. And I have such love and respect and admiration for this industry that I never for a second want to be a thorn in anyone's side. And so when I get information and I want to run to report it, I often ask myself, like, is this all right? Should I wait till this director is ready to announce this? Is there a reason that they put a code name on this thing? Am I spoiling a surprise? I realize, like, I don't want to be a part of that. I really don't. I need to regroup a little bit because I feel like something's got to give. And listening to the Macquarie podcast, something I took away from that, I should say, is that this industry is extremely volatile. And not necessarily in a bad way, just volatile in that you can't predict what's going to happen from what day to the next. That filmmakers and directors have to make a lot of on-the-spot changes and adjustments. That these productions are constantly sort of evolving. And Macquarie makes a big point of saying that, like, the big mistake that a lot of reporters and a lot of fans make when writing about Hollywood or covering Hollywood is they attempt to use logic. They attempt to apply logic to the proceedings. But the problem is Hollywood and the filmmaking industry, the whole process of making these movies is a highly illogical thing. There are so many egos, so many like outside variables, so many logistics that end up having to get rethought at the last second, so many moving parts on any particular blockbuster at any given time that it's damn near impossible to report on it 100% accurately. So what you end up doing as a blogger is you inadvertently create distractions. Instead of like giving people information that's going to heighten their enjoyment of the thing that they love, which is what I like to try to do, instead of that, you inadvertently start sending people off on these tangents, looking at stories about things, that information that they don't really need to have. You really just kind of like add all this extra fluff that is really almost like a hindrance between the audience and the movie that they're there to see. You don't need to, all this stuff, it's only there because people need daily content. So much of the stories that we see, that we share, that we read about, that we comment on, are all stories that really a few years back, before the internet boom and everything, none of us would be given any damn about any of this stuff. So when I look at all this, especially when I look at it and I realize that unfortunately most bloggers make the realization that negative headlines get a lot more clicks and a lot more attention than positive ones, that's where you end up with the troubling outcome, where a lot of sites just end up becoming much snarkier, much more sarcastic, much more mean-spirited, because as a business model, that sells in this cynical world we live in. So when I look at like the blogging thing, I don't see it as adding to your love of film. I see it as giving lots of distractions. So it's a tough spot to be in. As someone who loves this, as someone who loves operating Revenge of the Fans, when it feels like so much of the water that I'm swimming in has been so badly polluted by people who never ever think about the morality in any of this. It just, and then I turn around and I see like fans signing childish petitions to remake certain movies or recast certain things the way they want it to be. Like, I look at the whole online world, I look at all this entire thing that I'm attached to, and I have more questions than answers.